Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I am your host, Noor Kyle.
And I am her faithful sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
Yes, and thank you for joining us, whether you're here live or watching on the replay. Many of you know that we had a talk this morning at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time because today was our other talk Sunday. So we're coming at you twice today. And some people have had the guts to join us twice today. They're resolved. So thank you for being here, those of you. I will try to keep the spiel short and sweet-ish, hitting all the usual bullet points of supporting our channel by doing that whole liking, commenting, subscribing thing. We've really been appreciating that. Have we hit 48,000 yet?
We are at 4,799, and we're just,
Yeah, so I mean, we'll probably hit that by the time we're done with this talk or shortly after. So
or
that's
at
an
least by
exciting
tomorrow.
milestone. Yeah.
Maybe, unless
Um,
everybody hates us and goes away. You never know.
I mean, we could lose a few people. It goes up and down. That's natural, ebb and flow. So, thank you for being part of that. Thank you, thank you. I know many of you here are already subscribed, but if you're not, maybe you could be that person. That would be a big help to us, as I think it would be really great if we could get to 5,000 and just see what happens.
Celebrate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Throw a party when we get there.
we're not super ambitious about it, unlike, a few years ago when we really just wanted to get some traction and be able to share what we have to offer here with more and more people and make it available to them. And
And have more control over our channel.
that's the main thing. We wanted to have some say in the kinds of stupid ads that were shown in our channel. But having achieved that, we're really enjoying the organic growth. And like I said this morning, I plan on taking a little action on our Instagram just so you can have a really casual way to just connect with us. I have some plans about sharing Mushtaq's art and maybe shorter clips from these longer videos, which people keep suggesting that we do. I'm learning how to do that now. So, oncoming projects, yes. So, other than that, if you want to support our work in, other ways as well, you can, of course, donate. We have our Stripe and our PayPal below. And if you're looking for one-on-one support, we have that. We are able to offer you private sessions, either me or Mushtaq. We can work with you one-on-one, or you can work with both of us two-on-one. Send us an email if you want to inquire about that. We really get a lot out of being able to help people with everything that we talk about in a way that is tailored to where you're at, what's going on in your life, your goals. We are all working to be adult and awake, but there are many paths to get there. So, without further ado, keep in touch with us via email or Facebook primarily. Links for those things are in the description. If you want to join us live, people have been figuring out that those are how you get to pop in with us. Those are where we post the Zoom links. So, anyways, what are we talking about this evening?
What are we talking about this evening?
This evening, sort of inspired by our talk this morning, but a little bit separate from it, we are going to be talking about the duality of the mechanical self. The mechanical self, both in the asleep state and in the awake state, how those differ. And of course, we know that I mean, it's kind of weird to call it a tradition, but the Gurdjieff corpus, let's say, and the Sufi tradition both deal with the phenomena that we encounter when we are asleep, when we are awake, when the ego is asleep, when the ego is awake. So we're going to be talking about that this evening.
That's right.
Yeah.
What are we going to say about it?
So, as many know, because we use this terminology often, when we say the mechanical self, what we're referring to is the ego, the impulse-driven self. Some people might think of it as like the animal body self. Others might think of it as the Nafs al-Ammara, their commanding self. It's that part of us that is, as I said, impulsive, and it doesn't reflect on its actions. It's just go, 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 react, 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 as opposed to pause and respond. Pause with thoughtfulness and respond.
Yeah. Now, there's a weird thing about the mechanical self. It is either awake or asleep. The essence, the essential self, does not suffer from sleep. The essence is always awake, but it can, and most of the time is, identified with the sleep of the machine, the sleep of the mechanical self. Think about that for a second. And this is the basis of most spiritual practices, the basis of yoga, that you're identified with something and you can disidentify with it and become the witness, the seer. But if you don't, you are identified with your mechanical self. Now, why is this a problem? Anyone?
All of us have experience with this. So, what are some examples? Yes, James.
Um, if you're just going on response, you're just going on conditioning, you're rehashing responses that may not be appropriate to your environment, to your current situation. So there's that simple
It's
realignment
exactly
aspect of
correct.
it.
That's a major
Uh,
thing. Now,
and I think the more you're stuck in this, the more you have the dissatisfaction of not growing in a new direction or experiencing new capacities and really seeing what's actually around you as opposed to what outdated perceptual templates tell you was there.
yeah,
That's
the
not taking.
mechanical self basically evolved to keep you safe.
Yep.
And that means back in the day, our ancestors would be happily walking through the jungle and they would receive a stimuli, and the mechanical self would rapidly evaluate the stimuli and say either ignore it or run like hell. It still does that, but the stimuli are totally different. We don't have to worry about tigers sneaking up on us unless we're Alka.
Leopards,
Yeah, tigers and leopards are everywhere.
monkeys. Hmm,
Cows.
hmm.
Mustaq, I also think if you are not working from awareness, but from mechanical self, then you're not listening to your uh, intuition or the energy body,
Probably not.
right? And after some time, it all comes together and starts hurting in many ways. Uh,
Todd, did you have a thought?
Yeah, those of us who just um, neurologically lack the neurotransmitters have um, and don't have have a normally functioning executive function. It makes getting really anything done problematic.
Yeah. 'Cause. Yeah. So let's try an experiment. let us all sit here and don't do anything. Don't think about anything. Just let your mind go. If you're watching this on the replay, you can do this along with us because we aren't going to like chop out any part of it. Just be there. Don't even bother to notice anything. Sit there and do nothing. What do you notice? What happened?
My attention was looking around for stuff to grab onto.
Mm-hmm.
See people
So,
nodding. They relate to
yeah.
that.
I
Okay.
just think I had the pleasure of just sinking deeper into my breath, which is very
Okay.
nice.
See, you cheated.
It wasn't deliberate, but I did my practices just a couple of hours ago.
All right, good. Thanks to both of you. Who else?
Um, a flood of intrusive thoughts that took a while um, let pass by and still down.
Yeah, and if you don't try to make them still down, they just get deeper.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was just like, there it goes again, there it goes again, there it goes again.
Yeah. And something you'll notice is that these thoughts, excuse me, by and large, are all about you.
No, they were mostly about what was going on around the cars in the street, the flicker on the screen.
Yeah. And where were you in all of that?
Mostly nonverbal.
And where were you in all of that?
I was there, but quiet.
Okay. So there you are. You were at the center of it. If it goes on longer,
A says, my mind tried to take over with thoughts, and I still managed to feel my body.
yeah. See, everybody is trying to do meditation of some form or another with this exercise, but that wasn't the exercise. The exercise was the opposite of that. Let the thoughts take over. Let yourself notice everything around you, which is not surprising for Todd, but I know Todd for a long time, so I can say, yeah, I could see him doing that. Because you never know when a crocodile might leap out of the fish pond and grab you.
Mm-hmm.
Todd will be ready.
Todd will always be ready.
When you're a frog, the crocodiles are a constant concern.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And for K, if you let your mind take over with thoughts, you just you can discover some things about yourself by watching the content of the thought. And this is the machine at sleeping. This is what you get. You get this kind of noise when the mechanical part of yourself, the thing that Gurdjieff is always talking about, um, is just sitting there sleeping. It has dreams about things, and it has dreams mostly about you because that's its focus. Its focus is not me, it's not Noor, it's you.
I gotta come in here because as I was looking at the screen, the first thought was like, man, Muslim got a nice beard. That, that, that was like one of the first thoughts.
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah. And then feeling, just feeling the energy of New York City.
Mm.
It was really interesting. Just just feeling the entire space like, whoa, I'm here. But at some point, your beard found its way.
It's a very
Found
dignified
its way to
beard.
New York City. Yeah. Thanks, Osama. So, yeah, so M offers that the mind said, "What's next?"
Yeah. And funny, it should ask.
Actually, M wants to share more.
Yes, say more.
I think you know how the notion of we can't see ourselves. This is a perfect practice to see the mechanical self, which is going to be the gateway then, hopefully, by doing the right work to surpass it and then get to the true self. Because you need to see the shell before you can see the yolk.
Yes. You need to be able to observe the workings of your mechanical self. And it's harder than it sounds because your mechanical self will hide.
And often we've taken the mechanical self as us.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So now we're going to try another experiment.
And thank you, everyone who
Yes.
offered to share. Thanks for doing that practice with us. All right, next one.
The next experiment is to sit right where you are now, to be in your breath, and pay attention to your surroundings. Don't comment on them, just pay attention because there could be crocodiles. And notice what that feels like. Awareness of your surroundings, awareness of your breath. And if you lose it, which you're likely to, just bring yourself back to that. Okay, how was that? Was that different? Same? Yes, James.
Different,
In what way?
quieter, quieter. A self-referential thought would bob up before it really got going. I was returning to breath and environmental awareness. Things just quietened down, and bit more vivid is the best word environmentally in the visual field as well. So, but I've been practicing that for a while anyhow. But Yes, quieter. Now I've launched right back into self-referential thought and speaking and da.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Naturally.
in that time.
Yeah. So that's a taste of what the mechanical self is like when it's awake.
Mm. Osama, do you have something you'd like to share?
Yeah, similar to James. The difference between them, maybe in the quality of that presence. I still experience the energy of New York, hearing the sound. I have the windows open. It's a beautiful day over here. So hearing the sounds of the car, I can still feel all of that. However, it was minus the anxiety that comes with feeling the big city. Being in the presence of the breathing, being in, it diluted the anxiety that comes with the energy of the city in that presence.
Hmm. Thanks, Osama. Kevin.
Well, like what James said, the self-referential thing, in the first practice, it felt like there was an agitation in where my attention wanted to go, what I should be doing instead of not doing, or instead of doing nothing. And in the second exercise, it felt a lot more preconceptual and spacious within that present experience. So it was very, it gave me a sense of the dichotomy between the mechanical self asleep and the mechanical self awake, different channels, or maybe just taking the whole, not even a channel, just the present. So yeah, it was very useful.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll share my experience. I probably flipped him around a bit because the first time I had my eyes closed and I just happened to fall into attending to my breath. And I felt like I had really disappeared into the moment for a second without much thought, except my body is here, you know. And then the second one, I had my eyes open and I was distracted by watching all of you guys and thinking about you guys and the exercise and everything. So I actually had a harder time the second time, but I know I could feel that it was different. I could feel the quality of it being different. So I still had that comparison. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky doing these exercises with people who um, practice any form of waking themselves up. So take this as uh, a a pat on the back for yourself for actually doing some work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my point in mentioning that is that this is not the idea for this is not that we all agree and shake each other's hands and say, yes, sir, yes, sir. It's that we get to have an experience, observe, and reflect back on it and see what we can glean from that experience. So, Em, what are your thoughts?
For me, the question of what next dropped, and it was more what is. So rather than what next, it became what is. And I started to hear, see, and smell. The smell of my coffee came up, the noise around me came up, and I started to see also my surrounding without a next added to it. Yeah, so it made sense when Mushtaq said, this is the awake mechanic, the mechanical self that's awake. That makes sense. It's still not the real self that is present and awake all the time, but the mechanical self has a taste of what it's like to be awake.
And it's
Mhm.
in its proper position.
Right.
That's
Beautiful.
that's the most important thing. Your
Mm.
mechanical self has a job to do. And if it is allowed to do its job and not be distracted by all of the crap that rolls around in your head and gets attached to it, then it's a happy camper. At all other times, your essence is identified with all of the crap that the mechanical self has to deal with in its sleep. Because when the mechanical self is asleep, it's having nightmares. And the nightmares come from the content of your own memory and ego, the things that you have not let go of, the things that are reinforced every day.
Oh yeah. I mean, we talked about that this morning. Those
Yeah.
things that hit your fear, anxiety, and anger buttons over and over again, and just, wear those grooves in your neurology so that they keep firing when you're unconscious all the time for the littlest things. M.
It was said at the beginning that the mechanical self is programmed to keep us safe.
Yes.
So that's its program, and that's the program it's running on. And now we're living in a world where, yes, there's no tigers or whatever coming at us in that way, but we've started to perceive everything as danger through whatever, the cause and effect or sense of loss. Am I going to pay my mortgage? Is the bill going to come? Keeping up with all the next thing that's come up. All of these are somehow perceived to be a danger. And the mechanical self then falls into overdrive of trying to protect. So it's in overdrive all the time. And
Yeah.
hence builds up to all the way up to panic attacks and any kind of, neurotic thing that can happen to the brain.
This is
It
the
doesn't know how to
exact,
shut down.
yeah, this is the exact topic of our morning's talk. We pointed out that there are three key buttons that activate the mechanical self. Those buttons are fear, anxiety, and anger. If I want you to get deeply into your mechanical self, especially if I want to help you program your mechanical self for my best interest, the easiest way to do that is to fire off one of those buttons in you. I make you fearful, I make you anxious, I make you angry, and I focus those emotions on what I want you to pay attention to. We have seen that here in the United States, right? Undocumented aliens are eating your pets.
To use the example from this morning again, yeah.
Yeah. It's a great example because it's so incredibly stupid, and yet people believed it. All you have to do is make them afraid and angry and worried about poor little Fluffy. If I let Fluffy out to go relieve himself, he could end up on somebody's dinner plate.
Ugh, so it's such an odd thing for them to use as a propaganda piece.
But
So
it worked.
it worked. It definitely worked. Were you going to say more? Okay. All right. Cool. Anybody else before we go forward? Oh yeah, Osama, sure.
Yeah, I was reading um, a book by Ibn Arabi this morning, before even knowing that this the topic of this call, and there was something that stood out. It's like a bunch of quotes of Ibn Arabi.
Yeah, what
It's a
was the book that you were checking out this morning?
Nothing to be relied upon or something like that. It's
Okay.
called.
Yeah.
the things that can be relied upon.
Mm-hmm.
And the quote says it's a bunch of wisdom liners, I guess he Ibn Arabi.
Aphorisms or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm gonna read it in Arabic, and I think it's relevant to what we're talking about. And then I'll give the translation. He says, كل غيبة لا يرجع صاحبها بشيء كان ذلك محمودا أو مذموما فهي نومة لا غيبة فلا يعول عليها. Meaning, translated, every absence from the world or retreat from the world from which the one who withdraws returns with nothing, whether praiseworthy or blameworthy, is nothing but a sleep, not a true withdrawal. And that is not to be relied upon. So this distinction between this being sleep and being awake, and there's this retreat almost kind of like coming back from being asleep. And if the coming back to wakefulness, if that doesn't bring forth like, oh, wait a second, I was just actually asleep and I did this, whether it's blameworthy or praiseworthy, that's truly like, if nothing comes out of that moment, then the person was truly in a state of sleep, like they were really just gone. So that in between sleep and wakefulness and coming back to wakefulness and knowing that one was actually asleep like an hour ago or whatever. So that I thought that observation is also on par of what we're talking about here, that this transition in the in becoming awake in that moment and catching the moments of being asleep and observing that also.
To recognize that sleep has in fact happened. Do we
Right.
even notice that? Yeah. That is such, I mean, it's hard to go anywhere without learning that distinction. I mean, it's hard to go anywhere beyond that, especially in the things that we talk about, without the baby step along the way of learning to make that distinction. Yeah, to sense that distinction. You can always count on Ibn Arabi for some good ideas, and we can count on you, Osama, to share with them with us. So thank you.
Yeah, and if you can find it in English, it's what he's referring to in English. It's called the Book of Spiritual Advice. I know that the Ibn Arabi Society has a introduction to it that you can get, but
So, anywho, we can all check that out
yeah.
if we so desire later on. So I'm reflecting back on what you were saying, Mushtaq, and what you were saying about this sense. I mean, this came up this week with a client who ultimately ended up connecting the dots for themselves. I just had to say, yes, you get a gold star, basically. But they were wondering about, you know, who they are in the sense of like what is this personality thing and how does that play a role and how do I know who or what is me, so to speak. And there was this sense from the way that I was understanding what they were saying that they were confusing this formulation, the shape of the mechanical self for essence, so to speak, for their sense, this is I, this is my essence, this is the real me. And so we had to unpack together, okay, all of these things that have been accumulated over a lifetime, both, anecdotally and neurologically, those things are, they make up our story, but they are not the core, the very core essence of who we are. And that kind of freaks people out a little bit. That the machine, as they understand themselves, that person, that persona can be the machine running their life. Does that make sense, Mushtaq? Can you help me
Yeah,
flesh this out a bit?
I think you fleshed it out pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing, this, that persona, that mechanical self, that ego, that nafs can be awake or asleep. It can have any kind of character to it.
Yes.
It can be good, bad, neutral, anywhere in between, behave nice, behave nastily, all of that. And it's a very good, substitute for this real self that we are. It's a good stand-in. But if we start identifying with it, that's like that's like a I don't know, that's a straight flight to sleep, really.
Yep, it is.
Osama.
Yeah, that's deep.
And
Um,
confusing to some extent.
yeah, and I think because part of that knowing in that essence, relation is there, right?
Hmm.
Um, which kind of reminds me of I was a hidden treasure and I wanted to be known. I love to be known, therefore I created to be known. There's a relationship, there's a relation that's happening. And I wonder in that the relationship between the true essence or that true self, as we call it, and the persona, and kind of like what M was talking about in the beginning, using that as a gate in relation to the true essence. Um, but definitely loosen the grip of identification in order to create that space to allow for the distinction between the mirror itself and the image that's being reflected in it, or to create space in order to see the mirror in totality rather than being so up close, only seeing the reflection.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's what I'm getting from what you're talking about. I think this is,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's another way of describing the same phenomenon. Mushtaq was talking earlier about the nafs, the mechanical self, the ego resting in its rightful place. And that means it's still in relationship with essence, but it is not trying to take over the whole show and make it the ego show.
Yeah. What I want you to do is to have pity for your mechanical self because you have forced it to do jobs that it is not competent to do. And the reason that it does it is because you, the essence, has not done it. And its job is to keep you alive. So if it sees you not taking care of the business of the essence, then it will step in and take over. But your poor mechanical ego is there, beat up, raggedy, trying to keep going and totally incompetent to do what it's doing because it's not its job. Pity the commanding self.
Yeah.
I find that to be a fascinating perspective.
Yeah, it's not one that you hear terribly often.
And I've been thinking about us, us creative types who really value expressing personality, right? The way we dress, the way we talk, the way that we make art, all of those things. We can be very attached to those things and not want to let those disappear in the void, right? They feel like part of us. And this is where we can think about the mechanical self being awake or asleep. We can still hold on to those things. We can still be attached to all of those personality things, but in a way that allows us to stay awake while utilizing them. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So, what is the practice? The practice is to let your mechanical self, to let your nafs wake up. You know it's awake when it is quiet. The way it can comfortably wake up is to know that you are in charge by being in your breath and by paying attention to your environment, which is kind of its job. So when you're focused on, in part, what is directly around you, it will focus on that and it will stop blathering at you and regurgitating all of the myriad thoughts that you have every day, because that's not its job.
No, it's job. And I'm just using the example of creatives because I know many of us are creatives. It gets in the way of being creative to
It
just
does.
ride that freaking hamster wheel of the same shit over and over all the time. Yeah, so disidentification does not mean throwing our persona away. And as we spoke about this morning, there are in all the time, we talk about this all the time, the parts of our mechanical self, the parts of our persona, whatever, that really we once we have an experience of awakeness, we can observe that mechanical self and say, some of this isn't working for me. Some of this is not beneficial to me or anyone else. I think I'm gonna see what I can do to refigure this.
Yeah. So there's the thought. There's the basic technique. If you want more advanced techniques, you got to kind of get them one-on-one because they have to be tailored to your own mechanical self.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And that's it. That's what we got for tonight.
Any questions or thoughts?
Last thoughts.
James, sure.
All this kind of, I never say begs the question, but we've talked about, the consequence of mechanical sleep and its nightmare. Um, but how do you come to awareness of essence, what essence wants to do, or what your potentials are. I mean, in relation
First,
to
be
work.
awake.
Yes.
Everything else comes from that.
What would
You
that
do
look
that
like?
one thing, you will have the answer to everything else.
When I'm trying to come to a definite, the broad question, what do I want to do with my life that is valuable to me, and that the kind of thing. I mean, is that a separate kind of activity once wakefulness has made it possible, or is it an extension of wakefulness? Am I
Yeah,
even
a little of both,
right?
I
Okay.
think.
In that case, what interests me is what's the distinct aspect of that as opposed to the following on from wakefulness, what that kind of work would look like. I mean, the work of waking up the machine, I get that. And I'm interested to see what other aspects there are that are distinct or distinguishable from that particular activity.
Yeah, experiment.
Well, fair enough.
Sorry, man. That's
That's
how it
cool.
goes.
Here's us not
Uh,
telling you what to do because
yeah.
that is counterproductive.
Damn it, that's the kind of cult indoctrination I was looking for. You've ruined it for me again.
Oh, and that's simple. Write a check, send us all your money. That's what you really want to do.
Oh, okay.
See, it all makes sense now.
Thanks, James. And then
Alka.
Okay.
okay.
Go, Alka.
Go in.
I was just going to say to what James was saying that I think the whole purpose is that there's no real end to the awake state. So it changes for each person and it's a process like the opening of a rosebud. It's just continuously and its fragrance and its look and then it's dying and then coming out from the bud. And it's just an endless process. So there is no final end point to it on this stage of life anyway. But in how to get there, Ahmed, I've been reading a little bit from Ahmed Yesawi, and in how to get there, he says that erler ile otur hak sözünü işit, which means sit with the mature, awake adult, spiritually awake and mature people, and listen to the words of hak, truth. So that seems to be the main way to maybe, I don't want to say hasten, but like a sourdough matures in its waiting.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
That's the mother that, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The awakened, the mature individuals are the yeast that acts as leavening of the bread of your essence.
Yeah. And it's just endless. You can,
Yeah. Makes me hungry just talking about it.
Aw, so Ian says that's beautiful, and Osama says son and daughter of the moment. Yeah, what is that from, Osama? Son and daughter of the moment.
Some Sufi guy. I'm not really sure. Some
Yeah,
Sufi.
there was a Sufi writer who often signed his work a son of the moment.
Got it. All right, thank you. And that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And of course, it's always great to have a little taste of the words of our ancestor Ahmed Yasevi. We have some texts that were unfortunately pretty poorly translated.
Yeah, and I'm
So
slowly working on better ones, but
yeah, yeah.
that's going to come. I've got maybe 5 of the hikmats happily translated at this point. At least they are until I send them to people who actually speak Turkish, and they look at it and go,
Yeah, I guess that's your warning, all of
yeah.
you Turkish friends.
I've actually mentioned this to M before.
Mm,
So Alka has been waiting patiently.
thank you to you and
Yeah, well, I wanted to build on what James asked, and I am not at all this amazing reader like Osama and and all of you. So I'm speaking from my own experience, and I know Mustaq is really helping me with teaching me about Yoga Sutras and all that, so that I should be able to talk this big talk. But
I'm
from
just yelling at
my,
you.
he's really trying. But for me, James, the way I would say, like the way Mustaq said, that be awake. And then for me, it starts becoming these whispers when I'm awake. I start listening to these whispers which get repeated. Um, and then and then I start looking at those clues, and then intuitively they become something that was perfect for that moment for me to be more fulfilled and complete. So if that helps you, so but the first thing is you have to be awake,
Yeah.
and then listen to the whispers or these coincidences, right? Things start getting repetitively coming. Like Mustaq, I met Mustaq through that only, actually. Mustaq's words started like conversations with people. It was all Mustaq, Mustaq. And then I'm like, who's Mustaq? And next thing I know is I called him. I actually didn't even watch his videos. I actually called him first. And then he said, first watch my videos. you know,
who are you?
um, yeah. So my point is that that's how for me it's working. Being awake, then listening to the whispers, seeing some whispers that keep coming back again and again, 3, 4, 10, 15 times. And then intuitively you go towards it. That's my process.
Thank you, Alka, for sharing your process, because there may be people here who really relate to that or could relate to that. So thank you. James.
Just a few things have been rumbling around my head just over the past few minutes. Uh, in terms of what to do with yourself once you're awake, I'm putting it really crudely, but I'm now started reminding of a couple of things. Somebody somewhere, I can't remember who said, when in doubt with what to do to your life, master at least one of three things: a martial art, a creative or performing art, and a meditative art or a yogic art.
Hmm.
Then you've got, I think in Chinese philosophy, you have the five excellences.
Yep.
Another broad-based thing would seem quite wise. Um, in Antero Ali wrote this interesting book called The Eighth Circuit Brain, in which he argued that using that whole sort of post-Leary eighth circuit model, he argued that certain activities and experiences in the so-called mechanical or lower circuits were more congruent with the insights and transpersonal experiences that come from the upper circuits. Uh, and finally, there's the work of Arnold Mindell, process psychology, who actually said that a lot of the distractions and disturbances that recur and keep us distracted in our meditations are actually psychological material to amplify and integrate some other aspect of ourselves that isn't getting through. Just these all start to just coming together in my mind as following similar themes.
All right, cool. What
Some
was
more
that?
formal and some more personalized.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, multi-layered. What was the name of the last person you mentioned, or the resource, the last one you mentioned?
Okay, the very last person is Arnold Mindell, and he churned out a stack of books on what he called process psychology.
Oh,
Who said
right,
it was
yes.
primary
Process
process was your
psychology.
everyday conscious self. Secondary process was kind of like the Jungian shadow, you might call it.
Yeah.
And that the distractions you get in the meditative state, instead of trying to simply tether your mind to a point and shun them, there may be ways of amplifying them, because if they keep recurring, there may be something more than just programming. There may be some aspect of yourself trying to come through. So that was Mindell.
Mm.
Then there's Antero Ali, Anteroalli, and his book, The Eighth Circuit Brain, which he says that certain experiences or perspectives, if cultivated in the lower circuits, more readily integrate the transpersonal experiences in the higher circuits. They perform an anchor. If you have a shock, you also need an anchor. Otherwise, the shock may just destabilize you.
Mm.
And we have that book in our library, in the Kindle library.
I found it really interesting
The Google
and
Drive
eminently
library.
practical.
No, our personal Kindle library, we have it.
Oh, okay, good. I mean, I should check that out for I love that thread of the Eighth Circuit stuff going back to Leary and Robert Anton Wilson and
um,
carried forward.
Ali, I think I can't remember, somewhere in that book or somewhere else, he really emphasized that the robot isn't just a bad thing, that the
No.
robot has its job to do. And
Mhm.
so the robot and the the spirit, whatever you want to contrast, the upper four and the lower four circuits can actually grow together quite well. So he was all about that your shocks from the higher circuits need an anchor in the lower circuits. And that's a practice in itself, building the
Got
anchor.
it. Okay, now I follow what you're saying. I mean, for those of you who are not familiar with this paradigm, that's fine. You can, watch a video on the eight circuits as
Or you
a
can get the book Prometheus Rising by Robert
exactly.
Anton Wilson.
That's the better one, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eighth Circuit Brain is really like a follow-up to that book.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking forward to checking it out. But, start with the foundation, I guess. Thank you, James. I mean, that could be something that you explore as part of your own way of answering the questions that you've
Yeah.
asked, which are very important questions. So
But it
thank you
all
for that.
still assumes some basic wakefulness, some ability to not be totally driven by robotic patterns at all.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, that's why we've used some of that framework in our own talks in years past as well. All right, everyone. Any last thoughts? Last call?
My last thought is I'm getting hungry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're having pizza tonight. Yes, Ian?
Yeah, I, I've been feeling that I don't really have the words to know how to talk about what I want to talk about.
All right, let's give
That's
it a
often a
shot.
good sign.
Yeah.
But recently, I've been starting to pay attention to notions such as respect, and I seem to recall Wilson in one of his books, perhaps even in Illuminatus, talking about wanting to avoid judgment, um, something like that. And I've been trying to figure out where that fits in.
It fits in self-observation more than anything else. And it's specifically avoiding value judgments. Um, English is a really easy language to make value judgments in. I met Ian and he was a dick. That's a value judgment. And it's easy to form that in English. The proper way to express that is I met Ian and he came across as a dick to me. So I have to own my experience. It's not talking about your essence, it's talking about my experience. And so that's where that comes in handy, because mostly we mistake our experience for somebody else's essence. With the exception of El Cheeto Loco, because he is a dick.
Not familiar with El Chiso Loco.
That's right.
But I totally agree with your point.
The orange psychopath.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. So this idea of putting aside value judgments in order to allow for, what is that word? Presuppositionless
Yes. Presuppositionless
observation.
observation. Yeah. First person presuppositionless observation.
Yeah.
Yes, James.
The last bit of what I was trying to think of. What is the phrase, the Islamic phrase, that these things should not pass from the earth, or something like activities or arts that should be cultivated, that they should not be lost or something.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I swear I've heard you use it, that these things are good and they should not pass from the world, or like archery and
Hmm.
horsemanship and da 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 da. Doesn't ring a bell?
I think you may be talking about sunnah.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, sunnah are the things that the prophet did.
Uh-huh.
So the prophet enjoined everyone to practice archery.
Hmm.
Said archery is good. He enjoined everyone to learn to read. You know, he himself was kind to people. So be kind to people. It's like, here's your example of a way to behave. I mean, it can get as crazy as put your right shoe on first, but ignore that crap. We're going to get a
So,
whole bunch of hate messages from fundamentalists going, how can you say that? How dare
Oh
you say
no,
that?
they won't stick around long enough to hear that. And it's
yeah, but they
just as
use mobile
well.
phones. That might be the innovation there.
Yeah, there you
Oh
go.
my gosh, yes. You have no idea, James, how nutty these things can get.
Hmm.
So, did we thank you, James. I hope we approximated an answer to your question.
My question was pretty vague and waffling, so it just
Yeah.
rolled around my head. So
Yeah, all right. You know, we work with what we got, right? And Ian, did you get a response that was
Well, it was good good enough for now. It's obviously something I need to keep thinking more about,
Yeah, keep pondering and
Yeah.
and
circle back.
see if I can figure out exactly what it is I'm trying to talk about.
Awesome. I think we'll
Keep
look
going.
forward to hearing
We
more.
will revisit this at some point.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to Brady Bunch mode, Mushtaq.
Yes, ma'am.
Mm,
There we are, Brady Bunch mode.
Well, everyone, thank you for joining us once again. It's been a pretty good chat. I enjoyed this, and thanks for all your contributions and your thoughtfulness and playing along. And those of you who were playing along on the replay, you can share your experience in the chat too, in the comments rather. But without further ado, have a wonderful week. Enjoy. I know the day's pretty much over for most people in the world, but I hope you all had a wonderful Passover, a wonderful Easter,
A
and
wonderful Nowruz.
Nowruz, wonderful 420 for those who celebrate.
Yeah, because it is
I
420.
see you. I see you. So, take good care of yourselves, and we will be back at it next week. So we can wave to each other and everybody watching on the replay, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.